ancient Egyptians, of course, are very famous for, where they embalm people, of course, for the afterlife. And the proper name they use for mummification is Egyptian funerary practices. The term mummification, I'll kind of explain to you, it's kind of an accident. It kind of came about more into modern times. But the actual knowledge about how the ancient Egyptians buried people is gotten from Herodotus. So you see in that image, Herodotus has the oldest accounts really on how they buried people in ancient times. And kind of show you right here, this image here, but this is from book 2 of Herodotus' Histories of Herodotus, where he kind of goes into some of the things of how they basically would mummify people. And of course, one of the things he talks about is that they, of course, would remove the organs. It's one of the first things that they would do from the body. They remove the brain. According to Herodotus, they would use some kind of iron hook or some kind of hook. It may have been bronze, where they would basically remove your brain through your cavity, through your sinus cavity behind your nose, and they wouldn't keep that though. So as they would throw the brain away, basically, and then they would cut the side of the body. You can see there, cut them with a flint knife of some type, and they would remove all the contents of the abdomen. The only thing they would keep in the body, supposedly, was the heart. They would keep that in the body because the Egyptians believed that in the afterlife, your heart would be weighed. I think it gets a feather or something like that, the so-called weighing of the heart, where Anubis would judge you in the afterlife, how if you were good or bad, that kind of thing. Your soul could still be destroyed. If you were evil person, or maybe your body wasn't intact and things like that, that could happen as well. He says then they would cleanse and wash the body out. You say about these wine, maybe, and spices, maybe that may have been used. And then they would fill the body with different things. He's got different ideas of what they would fill inside the body. Pure myrrh, it's kind of been a debate about what myrrh is. I think some people think it was some kind of tree resin they may have used inside the body. Cassia is like cinnamon bark is what it actually is. Other perfumes. They may have stuffed linen inside the body too, as well. And then they would place the body in what they called natron for 70 days. I'll get to that in a second. But natron is a type of mineral salt that they would cover the body in to kind of dry it out. Which mineral salt is kind of like similar to baking soda. And I'll get to it later where it was found. It was found in the deserts of Egypt. But that was the longest aspect of the actual. I think it took 70 days total to basically do the mummification. Body is washed and then wrapped from head to foot in linen. They would wrap the body in linen bandages, basically. And then they would put some kind of coating on the outside that was kind of like a glue. But they think it was some kind of like a type of resin that they used, which I'll explain kind of was made out of like asphalt material. Then they would take the body and they would put it maybe in a coffin or chamber, that kind of thing afterwards. So he kind of goes into how basically people were mummified, they think. But I think there's a theory that there may have been some kind of embalming handbooks that actually told people how to, like priests or whatever, how to do the process. But now it's kind of missing. But yeah, they think that what they call asphalt or bitumen, which is a kind of like a modern names they use now, may have been used in the actual mummification process. And later, it was also called by the Arabs mumia. Yeah, mumia. Mumia is a type of resinous bitumen that was used in all kinds of things. It was used in embalming. They used it in medicines. Like I think the Greeks and Romans started using it to help heal like wounds and cuts and things like that. People also took it for internal medicine, like for stomach ailments and ulcers and things like that. I think for headaches too, believe it or not, mumia. I think they may have even put it on bone fragments, like fractures and things like that as well. But The term asphalt was a term that was coined by the Greeks. Asphaltos, I think, was the word they used for it. And then the scientific name is bitumen, that they have today. Some people also call it like a type of pitch, like a type of tar pitch or asphalt pitch as well. So that may have been the resin that they put on the outside of the mummy. And there's cases where they actually would take the outside of the mummy and grind it down and make it into like a powder. They could call it mummy powder, and people would take it as a drug, which was ineffective, by the way. Didn't really work. But people thought you could take it as a drug that could help heal you. There's, of course, that's the actual mummy of King Tut. You see that Howard Carter, of course, has opened. They think they poured it on the actual, like the actual mummies. They take the mummy and pour it on it. They think that's why a lot of the mummies are actually black looking, like so dark black looking, because of the mumia that was put on the actual mummies. It's like it may have taken up to 70 days actually to totally complete the mummification. I forget how long they covered the body in that mineral salt, but that was done for several weeks. But the actual process itself took, you can see, up to like 10 weeks. So pretty long time that it took. And like I told you, the chief embalmer would often wear the jackal mask, which represented Anubis, the god associated with mummification and embalming. That's the natron. They talk about natron. It's called different names, which is the type of mineral salt that was used in the process to dry out the body, which is really one of the main processes that they used, which took the longest, which I think it took like something like, I think it would cover the body maybe in 40 days. So more than half the time they would cover the body in this whitish material. And it was called, they called it natron because of the fact that it came from this desert. Actually, not a desert, it was a salt lake, which is west of the Nile, called the Wadi Natron. And so hence the name being used. But today, natron it's still used today, like as a type of soap and cleaner and things like that. They use it for. It's very similar to baking soda. Not quite, but like sodium bicarbonate or something like that is, I think, what actually is. So there you got kind of different mummies that you're looking at right there that they have. And they did have this deal where they had these gods that actually protected your organs. They were called the four sons of Horus. You may have heard about them. And each one of these gods would protect certain organs that would go into canopic jars, which canopic jars were these pottery jars where they put your organs into. They probably put natron in that as well. And the four gods were Dalmatef, Kabesonef, Hapi, and Seti. So Dalmatef is the one that's on the far left at the top. He looks like a jackal. That one would protect your stomach organs. Kabesonef, which is on the bottom left, was like a falcon type god. He would protect your intestines. I think most of your lower ones. Hapi, which is to the top right, looks like a baboon. He, of course, will protect your lungs. And then Seti on the bottom right, which looks like a human, will protect your liver. It's spelled different ways, sometimes with an I, but it's just a transliteration of the hieroglyphs. So those are all the different gods. And I think they took the canopic jars and they would just put them in your coffin, is what they would do. There may have been some case where they put it actually inside the mummy, but I think they didn't do that much as well. But yeah, the Egyptians took it pretty seriously, the afterlife. They really thought there was an afterlife. They would even sometimes put in food and other things like that, drink that they would need for the next life. There's even a case where they put statues of like servants that they thought could come alive, and help them in the afterlife. Have even boats. Like some of the pharaohs built like boats they thought they would need in the next world and stuff like that. So now I'll get to it later. Some of the Egyptians even had what they call the Book of the Dead, which were like these spells and incantations that would help them, travel through the underworld. And I think by the fifth dynasty, they even started writing them on the walls, like so-called pyramid texts inside their pyramids. So, yes, they really took the idea of the afterlife pretty seriously. And gods like Amun Ra, were kind of seen as eternal, etc.